You guys have gone under a pretty extensive overhaul of the roster this offseason. Just can you kind of talk about that process and where you feel like you guys are headed into the competitive stretch here this year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start back towards the end of 24 when we made some hard decisions in terms of not exercising some options and letting some free agents leave, which is not always easy. But considering the year that we had in 2024, we felt like it was the right decision. Since then, we have added 8 players that we feel good about. I've said this multiple times before. It's easier just to let players go, and it's easier to just sign guys or sign players, but we wanted to try to sign, as I've mentioned before, the right players, and obviously that still remains to be seen. But the fact that we were able to add 3 homegrown players, and I want to be real clear, obviously the expectations for homegrown players that are very, very, very young is certainly different than when you're signing designated players and TAM and senior roster players. But the fact that we were able to add 3 homegrown players, we're very bullish on their development, hopefully over the next couple of years, that they're going to make significant impact on our first team. Maybe not this year. We don't want them to think like that. We want them to want to play right away, but that might take a little bit of time. I think the last time we spoke, I think we had Mason on board that we acquired via free agency, so we felt good about that signing. And then, obviously, in the last few weeks, to be able to add Jensen Miller as a college draft player, but also Dejan, Manu, and Shapi. We feel like we've addressed some needs and some targets going into the off season that we wanted to address. It'll take a little bit of time for them to get acclimated, but I've always felt that the higher quality and the better player that you add to the team, usually, hopefully, that takes a shorter amount of time. So it's a starting point. We've been very clear and very open that it's this window, it's the summer window, and next winter. We have a lot of flexibility at the end of 2025, as we've also been open about. But that remains to be seen how this season goes in terms of what we will or won't do at the end of 25. But we feel like we've addressed some needs and we're in a better spot now than we were at the end of 24. But this is not a finished final product as of right now.
This has always been a club that has kind of stated like there's 3 trophies or 4 trophies at the beginning of every year that you could possibly win, where the goal, the expectation is to try and win them all. When you're in the middle of a rebuild, obviously that kind of shifts. Where do you place your expectations for the group on this season, and does that change even if you add further players into the fold?
I don't want this to sound like a cliche, but we're in this to play and win, right? And so if our goal every single year is not to win MLS Cup, and I don't say this sarcastically, like, what are we doing this for, right? So is that realistic this year? That remains to be seen. But we're trying to rebuild, as you said. We're trying to build a team that can, first of all, we need to get to a place where we're qualifying for the playoffs and competing for championships. Obviously, last year that didn't happen. That's the goal going into it this year. And so we're trying to construct a roster that is capable of first making the playoffs, competing for a championship, and then ultimately winning a championship. So that will never change from year to year. And for as long as I'm here, that's what I'll say at the beginning of every year, because that's why we do this.
So when you first brought in Dejan, a player of that caliber, I guess, does bringing in a guy like that kind of bring more urgency to then bringing in pieces around him, or does that change the process at all?
I think it's just part of the process. And when I say, I'll address it like this. When our off-season started, speaking frankly, we weren't targeting a number 9 because we had a DP number 9, right? So that significantly changed for us when Allen was transferred to Chivas, right? So we had targets and we had positions going into the off-season. But then when that happened, I don't want to call it a pivot, but we had to rethink. We needed another position. So I had been in conversations with Will Kuntz at the Galaxy for a number of months, just various players, and not really thinking specifically about Dejan at the time because we had Allen. So when that changed, the conversations with Will accelerated to, I knew they needed to make some moves for different reasons, and he was one of the players. So I'll also say, without the new mechanism in MLS, I never want to say never, but I don't think it would have been feasible on either side had the new mechanism not come into place for a trade for cash, because of the assets that we had, the assets that they wanted, the interest that he had south of the border. So without that, I don't know if this deal gets done, and it happened pretty quickly, but we feel that in the case of Dejan, he's a proven goal scorer in this league. He's had individual success. He's had collective success with the Galaxy, obviously winning MLS Cup last year. He's at a perfect age. He's a number 9. Goal scorers are hard to find. And the final piece for Peter and I is that the Galaxy allowed us to speak to him prior to the trade, and we wouldn't have probably signed off on the trade had they not given us the green light to speak to him, because it was critically important. I can say this: all 8 players that we've brought in so far they all want to be here. And that really matters. As we're doing a rebuild, we want players and we want staff that want to be here. And I mean want to be here with 2 feet all in, not 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And so when we spoke with Dejan, he was all in. He was super excited, wanted to come here, and so that sealed it for Peter and I. Like it felt right, it feels right. Obviously, he's got to get adjusted to life in a new city and on the field and new teammates, but we feel like over time we feel great about the signing.
And then that deal with Shapi and Manu, kind of a unique deal. You don't see that too often. Can you talk a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah, that's a fair comment. It was a unique deal. It was one that I have not been part of before, and frankly, I don't think the folks at MLS had been part of a deal similar to that. And I went over to Greece, and in fairness to Aris, they were great. They gave me authorization to speak with Manu. They gave me authorization to speak to Shapi. So what I just said about Dejan is also true for them, and I'll let them speak for themselves. Manu obviously arrived. He's here. Shapi will arrive tomorrow, so we're excited to get these players in market. But they both really wanted to come. And it was interesting. I mean, not to get too detailed on the deal part of it, but to be part of a deal where you're talking with one club and a set of agents over here for Shapi, another set of agents over here for Manu. Then obviously MLS is involved with the transfer agreement. So it was an interesting deal. It didn't happen overnight, but we're glad we got it done.
And how important is that for you to get the chance to talk to them before?
I think it's for us, it's critical. It's one of the things we talked about going into the offseason that I don't think we would have signed any of the players had we not had that ability, because, like I said, and I know I'm repeating myself, but it is very important for us to bring people in here that want to be here. And I can speak, like I said, those 2 both want to be here, so that was critically important for us. And it's not just the player, but the girlfriend, the wives, the children. Like it all matters, right? Because I've had players in the past where the player wants to come and then the wife's hesitant, and then it impacts everything. So it's important for us that everyone's all in, and you never know what's going to happen down the line, but we feel like it puts us in a better position from the get-go, knowing that everyone's all on board with that. So that is, and the other piece to it on the field, that we feel there's a real benefit to those 2 players having played together at one club for a little while in terms of a chemistry on the field, and we're hoping that's going to translate to here.
Speaking of Manu and Shapi, the uniqueness of the deal, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but with the transfer fees, obviously a designated player can be whatever you want. It doesn't affect the cap beyond being a DP. How much of that gets applied to Shapi, and how does that affect your cap?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I won't get into the specifics of the deal, and I hope you can understand and respect why. But what I will say is, yes, Mano's a DP, and Shapi's a TAM player, and I think everyone knows what that means. And I think the overall compensation reflects that, both from a transfer fee standpoint and from a salary standpoint. So that they're aligned well in that regard.
And then you have 5 roster spots left. How many of those do you envision filling this year, and where specifically are you aiming to add players to the roster?
That's a very good question. We are still, this is a work in progress, and I mean that in the sense of we will certainly add players this window if we feel they're appropriate. I feel like we've addressed some attacking positions, right, with Dejan, Manu, and Shapi. We could look to add someone in the midfield. We could look to add someone in the defense. I want to be also clear that we have a couple of weeks. We haven't fully decided yet on which model we'll go with, if we'll go with the 3-3, 2-4. The great thing about where we sit right now is we have the flexibility to do either. And so we do have targets. We do have players that we're looking at right now. And some of that will depend on who may or may not become available in terms of actually being able to get, pen to paper. So I have said this before, but I also like having that flexibility, and so nothing's finalized yet, but we're still looking to add to this window.
Hey, Mike, just wanted to ask you about Jacob Bartlett. What do you guys like about him, and how do you see him fitting into the club now and in the future?
We're very bullish on all three of our homegrown player signings, but Jacob in particular, I mean, he's got a very good confidence about him at a very young age. And so, you know, he plays the position well. He's pretty cerebral. He's got a good touch. He's got a good understanding of the game. Obviously, he's got a ways to go. He's very, very young, but we feel like not just Jacob, but all three players have a real big upside. And as I said before, in terms of the homegrown players, the way I look at it is I really would prefer not to sign a homegrown player myself unless we feel that, again, maybe not in year one or even year two, but that we feel that are going to be able to contribute to the first team. And we feel in all three of the players that we've added, again, it remains to be seen, but we feel there's a real upside and that one day they're going to be playing regularly for us on Saturday night.
Back here to Carlos.
When you look at rebuild the team and adding players, you know, you take a look at your academy, and I don't know if you can talk about the invites that you brought for the team, specifically with Johan Ortiz. I don't know if you have seen him, been with the club since he was 11. Do you see him eventually making you know, his way up to the first team down the road?
We hope so, and I'll make this comment on behalf of the club. It's not just a personal comment. Like there's very little that gives you greater satisfaction than when you have a homegrown player that starts at 10 or 11 or 12 and can develop and grow with the club from the academy to the second team to the first team. That's a great feeling, at least from my perspective. So the more homegrown players that we can add that can contribute, that have come from our academy, I think it's a testament to what our academy coaches are doing, our second team staff is doing, and obviously the first team. But I will speak on behalf of the club in terms of this. We put a huge emphasis and priority on vertical integration. So to see players kind of come through the process, it's a great feeling.
And Mike, you had talked previously about how you maybe came into a situation where the team was a bit hamstrung as far as flexibility and things like that with contracts maybe that had been signed in the past. How do you feel you've done with kind of straightening that out and getting yourself that flexibility now? Yeah,
it's a good question. In the summer, we added Joaquin Fernandez. It was really we only really had the ability to make one move last summer. We knew coming into the winter we'd have a lot more flexibility. We think we've taken advantage of that a little bit, but as I alluded to earlier, we're not finished. We will have, the good thing is going forward, we still have more flexibility for this window. We have flexibility for the summer, and depending on how this season goes, we have an enormous amount of flexibility at the end of 25. That doesn't always happen. It's rare that it happens. I think for a little while, probably prior to my arrival, we were hamstrung a little bit, but to have that flexibility, especially when you don't have the year that you want to have, which we had last year, it gives you the opportunity to make changes. And so without that, you know, we're in a much more difficult spot. But so it remains to be seen. We haven't played a game yet. Like I said, we're bullish on the players we've added, but we have to go out there and get results and play, and it will take a little bit of time. But like I said, you know, whether it's the 2+4, 3+3, international roster spots that we have, senior roster spots, 5 spots that you mentioned earlier. So we still have the ability to add and get better, and that's a positive for me.
My name is Jamie Chow from Taiwan Soccer News. So question is, this season, your goalie, their age is very young, 17, 22, 23. Do you have any specific expectation for this goalie?
It's a good question. I may be speaking out of line here, but we probably do have the youngest goalkeeping core in MLS. And so they'll all have opportunities. And so including with our number one at the moment, John, who's also a very young man and young goalkeeper, but we're extremely excited about the upside that we feel that all of them have. John's in a situation where he's been a backup for a number of years now. He has an opportunity to go out and show what he can do, so we're excited about that. And then in terms of our other goalkeepers, yeah, we have a young goalkeeper core, but I also look at it like there's a tremendous opportunity for there in front of them, and we'll see who seizes it.
Hey, Mike. Over here.
Sorry, I didn't see you over there.
Hey, you mentioned wanting to win now, but it's also, you mentioned rebuild. Just what are your expectations going to be going into this season? Are you more lenient on, just those expectations of wanting to win now and that it may take some time?
I mean, yes and yes and yes to all of it, but like, as I said, whether we're in the middle of a rebuild or we're not, no one's going out there not to win, right? Whether it's me, whether it's the players, whether it's the coaches. So I put the rebuild off to the side for a minute because our job and our goal is to win games and win championships. And so I don't want to say it doesn't matter who's out there, but we're trying to win. That's why we do this job. That's the bottom line, the end-all, be-all is to win games. How many games we win this year, I can't tell you, but we're going out to win every game.
Todd? And Mike will be available after this for one-on-ones too, and so a couple more than Peter.
Mike, the way that it works in MLS, you have a few designated players. How important is it for a market like Kansas City to hit on the designated players? Is it more important for a smaller market team than to leeway with the bigger ones?
I think if you look around the league, small market, mid-market, large market, however you want to say it, you need your designated players. You need your best players to play their best and be the leaders and the driving force of the team. So, yes, it's important, but I think if you look around the whole league, all teams would say you need your designated players to hit, right? You need other players to hit as well. But in this league right now, if you don't have 2 or 3 designated players and you don't have 2 or 3 under-22 initiatives, it makes it much, much more challenging to win, right? That's just the reality of our league. So the market size matters less to me than it does about getting the right players in, whether they're DPs or not, that can help your team win. But the answer to your question is, yeah, you need your designated players to play well. You just do.
You mentioned, excuse me, wanting to have players who have both feet in to the organization. Some of them came from championship clubs, et cetera. What do you feel like was appealing about the team so that those guys do feel like they're 2 feet in when you've had maybe not the success you wanted the last couple of years?
That's a great question, and one I can't answer for them, but I think it's a little bit different for the international players because, in the case of Manu and Chape, I'll use them for an example. I don't think they know that obviously the United States, but they don't know the different markets, and so I think they look at it a little bit differently. I think someone like Dejan, who it's probably a better question for him, but I've said this before, I'll put our facilities and our infrastructure up against anyone's in the entire league in terms of we have 2 training centers, our Compass is world-class, our stadium is world-class, so what we're able to provide in a smaller market, as you say, is I think almost unparalleled compared to the rest of the league in terms of what we can offer from a facility standpoint. Obviously, our coaching staff's been here for a long, long time. That usually matters to players, right? Because we're not a club that's had turnover every single year. So when players come in, they know that a coach has been here for a long time, and that says something about the club.
Last question, Mike.
Hey, Mike, I just wanted to ask about the commitment from the ownership because this is as you guys have said, a 3-year mission, basically. That takes ownership buy-in to say, this is the right plan, let's go. How did you get that accomplished?
So when I came on board in July, Peter and I had a lot of conversations, and we met with ownership towards the end of last year. And I've said this previously publicly, but I think it's worth repeating because I think it's important. And when we sat down, we went through kind of our vision and everything on the field from a player standpoint, but also off the field in terms of additional staffing. And I got to be honest with you, they were completely supportive, and in terms of pushing us forward to go make signings and add staff. And so that's been a real pleasure for us to be able to go out and try to rebuild this. And the reality of it is in our league today, you have to spend some money to have some success, because if you don't, then you really don't have a chance to win. And so to have that support from them was really the starting point for us to go forward and get some players.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
At this time, we're joined by Sporting Kansas City manager Peter Vermes. We'll open it up to questions from the media. First question will go to Daniel Sperry with the Kansas City Star.
I asked Mike this question.
I was just going to say, don't ask me the same questions you asked to Mike, because it makes no sense.
It's not about roster stuff.
We're already starting. It's amazing.
No, with the way you guys have kind of talked about this kind of rebuild of the roster over the next couple of windows, including this last one. I'm just curious how do you? I know your drive and the expectations for this club is always be competitive. So how do you balance the need for progress and the need for results kind of in the same stretch?
Yeah, I think the good thing is if I talked to the players about this. If you looked at us in day 1 preseason and looked at us the final day, there was huge progress in so many aspects, right? Individually and then also just for the team. And we worked on, obviously 3 main aspects of the game, which are defending, attacking a little bit less, a lot of defending, and then the other is set pieces. Attacking is, we still needed to add some players to help us in that area, and it's hard. Very few coaches can ever teach creativity. It's just players come with it and they have it, and a lot of times if you don't have, you have to add it and you have to find it, right? And we think we've done that. So I do think though this progress has been made, and the team that we have today, or the team that we have on Tuesday night, and when I say the team and even the way that we're playing, it'll be different a month from now. And it should be different than a month from then, and it should just get better and better as time goes on. And I think that we have this combination of some guys that have been here before, and then also new guys coming in, and also some young guys coming up. The young guys are going to get a lot of experience. They did in preseason, and all of it was good for them. They were put into MLS situations which they probably normally wouldn't get, and it was a great environment for us to see those guys play. At the same time, as you're trying to progress in everything that you do, you also have to be competitive, and I do think that those two things they always go hand in hand. You have to, at this level, you're here because you're a professional, and professionals compete, and you still have to compete and try to win and get points, and those are all things that the guys have to do.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
Good, how are you?
That's not one of my questions.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're done. Now, could you speak to, at what point did you realize Allen was not going to be part of the 2025 plan, and how fortunate do you feel like something was able to come together with Dejan?
I think with every single player on the roster, always you have to maintain an openness from listening to all kinds of opportunities. I personally have done that ever since I've been here. We've moved a lot of players over time, and probably players that people didn't think that we should, or at the time, or what have you. But you always have to be open to it. At the same time, the outgoing and the ingoing, for sure, was a big step for us. A person that's 10 years younger, already adapted to the league. We didn't have to go outside the league and find somebody to, there's all kinds of things that you adapt to the league on, right? It could be travel and all the other things. The other thing about Dejan is that he's also been through a process in LA that's very similar to this, is where you're rebuilding a team. And so he's been a part of that. And obviously achieved incredible success last year, and he was a huge part of that. So I think the combination of the two, one out and one in, was huge for us. And yeah, we're excited about how that fits into our team, not just in the short term, but the long term as well.
And then I wanted to ask about Jacob Bartlett. He's a guy, I'm sure you've been aware of him for a while. What's the value of the experience he got at Notre Dame for that one semester, and how you're projecting a little when it's a 19-year-old, but what traits do you see that you think he can be successful in this league?
Yeah, I think it was good for him to go and do what he did at Notre Dame. I really do. To go get that experience, it was great. He'd always said to us that he wanted to be a pro, which you could see that in him, in the way he always conducted himself around the first team. And then the final piece is he has a huge upside. He's a really intelligent kid. Sometimes you have to spend a lot of different ways to help a player learn, right? You have to get on, say it could be like on a whiteboard or with magnets, or it's video, and then you kind of got to walk him through. You can have conversations with him, and he's quickly picking things up. So it's exciting to see that. It's exciting to see a kid from here sort of have the same idea moving forward in his mind, that this is what he wants to do, and he has a really good head for it. And like I said, he has a big upside. But I believe that this preseason was really good for him, because he had a lot of games to play in, and he had to play against real MLS teams, and I thought that was excellent for him and all the other young guys that were there.
You're in the back. Looking at the memorial set up for Adon, I'm wondering if you might reflect on your memories of him as a reporter. Of course, he would have been here today, and what he did for the club.
Yeah, I spoke about this at our, I believe at our last game. You know, he was, he had a calmness to him, always whenever he asked questions. He was always thoughtful in those situations. And I always had a really good rapport with him. So incredibly sad for his family, for all of us that knew him. And yeah, I can't say how much from the club's perspective that, you know, our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family.
You know what's coming.
I knew when he was passing it that we had to go down this way. Not what I wanted to do.
Peter,
You didn't ask Mike to speak Spanish.
That's right. Peter, obviously, when you look at players and trying to bring new players in, you look at the academy and you have some invites. And I don't know if you can talk specifically about Johan Ortiz, who has been with the club since he was 11. Do you see him eventually making his way up to the first team down the road?
So can I do this in English? Okay, good.
It's a free country.
Okay. Good answer. No, we'll speak specifically about him, and then I'll talk a little bit bigger picture. Johan has some interesting qualities as a midfielder. As I said, even with Jacob, if you look at Ian James, Cello, you look at all those guys that, Cristiano, who all came with the team. This experience that they had in this preseason was excellent because I don't know if they would have gotten the same amount of experience if other players would have been within the team. They got great experience. So did he. Johan has really good qualities. Does he have the chance right now to make right now? No, not on the first team. But a lot of those other guys don't either. But they're making the progress, and this is what it is to build a player through the pro player pathway. But he does have good qualities, and amongst all the rest of them, there's a lot going on within that environment in our club. We'll probably be making an announcement, probably I would say in the next month, in and around our pro player pathway, because we're continuing to see how important that is as we move forward to the overall process of us acquiring players, because we need every single outlet there is. If you look, as you all know, that we signed our first round draft pick in Jansen Miller. It's important because it's another player that we're able to get into the team from another mechanism that is provided us with acquiring players, and that is the most difficult thing in this league. And you got to remember, it was at one time we were dealing with 12 or 14 other teams or 13 other teams. Now we're dealing with 29 other teams, and it gets very competitive.
Announcement in the next month. Just tell us now.
Sorry, can't do it.
When it comes to this team, you've always said the first 10 matches is usually when you kind of figure out what the formula is, but you've got guys.
Amazing how you guys remember stuff.
I know, right? But you've got guys coming in today, and you've got guys coming in later, and you got a match Tuesday. How hard is it, and what's the challenge for you guys to put together something that you can formulate that's competitive, you know, for the first 10 games to try to find what type of rhythm and what type of team and character you are?
I think it's a good question, but it's probably the answer is a little different than I would probably say in the past, because teams that we have in the past were the core group, everything was kind of there for a number of years, and we were just adding a piece here or there, and a lot of times those pieces were already here, and we were already in preseason working with those players. The difference now is that we're in this place where we really do have this build over the next 3 windows, because it's the time period in which it provided us with the most flexibility within our roster, the end of this window and the next. And there's a lot of different things that we can do, and as Mike already alluded to, we don't know if we're 4-2 or 3-3 in regards to U22 initiative and DPs. The other part of it is now that Manu is here, and Shappy should be coming by tomorrow or the next day, which is great. You're going to see them a little bit and then see what their characteristics are. It's one thing for us to have done the scouting and even for us to have watched them, live. The difference is when they get here, now you start to see how those qualities fit into the team. And then you're trying to make your little assessments to say, okay, well, we wanted to get this position, but maybe the characteristics of that player should be a little different than what we thought based on what they bring. And so we don't have a chance right today to see what they offer, but we'll know that, I would say, over the next month or so. And there's still some other, as I think Mike alluded to too, is our idea is to try to continue to keep adding some players here and there as long as they fit us. But I think the assessment of the 10 games is a little bit different based on where we are in that build.
And my last question, I remember saying when Johnny left and when we met before you left for preseason training, you were looking for somebody to step up, like maybe as a captain or something, and you're like, to use your words, you use cojones to try to say it. Anybody shown that?
That's when I spoke Spanish. That was good. I would say I'm not ready to make that announcement today. I do think there's some guys that have stepped up. I think we do have some guys in the team that are incredibly professional in the way that they go about their business every day, and those guys are really good examples within the team. And so, for sure, before the first game, we'll have someone that will be in that position, and I do think that they've stepped up, if you will. I really do. But I also being a captain and a leader, it's like anything. You kind of, like I said, whoever that is, whatever they're like on Tuesday night, they'll be much different a month from now because they'll grow as well within the team, and they'll understand that, they're an extension of the coaching staff, but they're also an extension of the players, and they have to sort of work in between those lines and help with the buy-in, the game plans, and all those different things, and that's going to be a work in progress as time goes on. But it's a good question.
Peter, at the outset of last year in your sort of postseason analysis, you had identified culture as one of the things you thought needed to improve. What's been that process during the last 4 or 5 weeks, and what are the early returns on it?
Yeah, I could spend probably an hour talking about that, but I'll try to condense it. As soon as the season was over, we obviously had a lot more time because we weren't in the playoffs. We went back and as a staff, we went and revisited everything that we do, all of our processes, you name it, everything from what we did on game day, training days, in town, away from home, acquisition of players, just all of it. I would say that some of the things we kept the same, some of the things we went back to, some of the things that we used to do, and then some things we just completely changed. But at the outset, I was very clear with staff early on. I had a meeting, talked to everybody about sort of our expectations moving into this year and what those changes and upgrades, if you will, would be. And I did the same with the players. As I said on the players' side, which is much easier to say this, and that is all the things that I kind of went through with them. I said, at the end of the day, none of this matters. If you're a pro and you come and work every day and you're responsible and accountable to that for yourself, then all these things that I talked about really, they don't ever come into play in a negative way. With staff, it's a different one. Staff has an obligation to understand that they're helping drive the everyday, and their individual agenda or needs can never come into play into what the team focus is. And so I really think our preseason was good from that perspective. There's no doubt that the culture already is changed. But I also think that when you bring in new people as well, there's a big help with that.
We've got time for one more question, and then Peter will be available afterward for one-on-one interviews.
In professional sports, even in the most patently obvious situations, people are very reticent often to use the word rebuild, and both you and Mike have said it numerous times. Why do you feel comfortable with that when many people aren't?
Because there's only one other time that I did a rebuild here, and that was when I took over after 2009. In 2010, I mean, if you go back and you look at how many players I turned over at that time, and we're in the same place as well now. with that, because all the other years, you know, I'm just using an analogy. It was in all those other years, I was once we got the team and that core group there, we were just kind of trimming the bushes every year. I know it's a little bit harsh, and I don't really want to use it this way, but you're almost like taking a lot out of the garden and replanting it. And we've done that already with some players, and we're also creating a foundation with some of the young players that we brought into the team as well, because they're core guys that have been within our pro player pathway. Now, they have a big responsibility, right? They have to make the team and become staples and pillars within the team, and they have to work towards that. But we have now this kind of like top-down and middle approach. You know, the down is the young guys coming up, and the top that's going down are some of the more experienced players that we're bringing in, and some of the guys that have been here. And then that kind of middle group, you know, if you take Jansen Miller, he's 23 years old. He's a little bit older, has some experience of playing the last 4 years in college, which is it the same? No, but you grew up in a different way in that environment where a lot of our guys, I mean, we got guys on our team that are 16 years old. They don't have that experience, right? So it truly is a rebuild for us. But at the same time, we still got to find a way to be competitive.
Peter, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, everyone.
Welcome, both of you. If you could just kind of talk about the conversations that you had with Mike Burns and what made you want to come to this team.
Of course, I knew the coach before I came here. I met all the players. I knew them even before I played many times against them. So I like the idea. I like the project. So I think that this team can be successful in the next few months, years. So, and we are ready to fight.
Yeah, me, I didn't have so much idea, not like him, but they tried to explain to me the project they had, the idea that they had, and you can see now with the other signing and the team how they've been in together for many years, and now looking forward to start with them, to meet everyone even more, and I'm really proud to be in this club.
I think we've heard that Peter Vermes had been trying to get you to the team for a while now. Have you had conversations even before this window with the team, and how aware of Sporting had you been kind of building into coming here?
For me, it started to move fast just after Christmas. Mike came to Greece to see me, and we had a really nice chat, and I think there was the time that I really clicked on, and I said, I think it's the place for me, the perfect place for me. So yeah, really after Christmas went really fast, and I'm really glad that he came over and showed me that interest, because it made it so easy for me.
Manu, I'll start with you. This Chad Smith, KC Soccer Journal. So you're coming from the Greek League, you're a Spanish player. Sometimes in the world, people just call it Sporting Kansas. They don't know Kansas City is actually the name of the city. What did you know about this team before you came here, and what kind of appealed to you about wanting specifically to come to this city versus maybe the more popular American cities?
I would lie if I say that I know a lot. Of course, I knew the club from years before, from the time that it was called the Wizards. I knew some history of the club, that it's been one of the founders and very big. I've always known that. And as I said, even if it's not one of the biggest cities, I know it's one very football or soccer city that, as you say, for me is football. And as soon as I saw the interest, and as I say, the conversation that I had with Mike made it so easy because of the project that they have, and how ambitious this club is.
And then Dejan, for you, Mike was talking about it's not just the player wanting to come, but also the family wanting to come. I don't know what your familial situation is, but was there anybody else you had to convince to come here, and what was that conversation like?
I mean, of course, that was my decision, but with the help with my family's friends, everyone was involved, so it wasn't that tough to say yes and to come here.
Dejan, both your previous coach, Greg Vanny, and current coach, Peter Vermes, have had success throughout the years. You've been with the club for a bit now. What would you say are some of the major differences about the way they work?
They have a lot of similarities, so I think that Peter has in some ways different approach, but I think that idea is basically the same. Both teams, they want to play, they want to keep the ball. Maybe press is different in Kansas, so that's the only thing that's going to be maybe different.
Manu, aquí atrás. Carlos Chicas with Nuestra Visión Arkansas. ¿Puedes hablar un poquito de tu llegada y las expectativas, no solo del cuerpo técnico, pero qué vas, en tu experiencia como profesional, qué vas a aportar no solo al equipo para los objetivos del campeonato de la MLS? ¿Y qué opinas también de la juventud que está tratando de integrarse al equipo?
¿Español?
Sí, en español, por favor.
Ok. No, desde el primer momento que me llegó la oportunidad de venir aquí, me transmitieron muchísima confianza. Creen que soy un jugador que puede dar creatividad, que puede ayudar al equipo a crear ocasiones, a mantener la posesión. Soy un jugador que le gusta mucho tener la pelota en los pies y ayudar al equipo a tener buen juego y a crear ocasiones. Y bueno, es importante, como dices, la juventud, ¿no? Hay que buscar una balanza buena entre juventud y entre jugadores con un poco más de experiencia. Yo creo que hay una buena combinación aquí y estoy seguro que con esta ambición que está demostrando el club, como este proyecto, como dije antes, las cosas van a ir bien.
Manu, en español, ya que empezamos. Walfred Rodas para la Semana del Sur. Ya sé que respondiste en inglés, pero ¿por qué Kansas City? Esa es la pregunta. ¿Por qué Kansas City?
Como dije, el interés fue grande y esa conversación que tuve con Mike con su visita a Grecia, a Salónica, previa a un partido con mi club, fue muy importante. Me transmitió toda la confianza que tenían en mí, toda esa confianza que el entrenador también tenía en mí. Y luego, como ya dije, la ambición de este club, de las ganas que tienen de ganar y de volver a conseguir títulos es lo que me llamó a mí más la atención.
En inglés, por favor. Did you have a La Liga club growing up, your favorite club?
La Liga club, you mean? Yeah. Sporting Gijón, same name.
Okay. Obviously, Messi played in Spain for a long time, and you might be sharing a field with him Tuesday. Just, any thought about that idea? I mean, did you ever think you'd be on the same field with a guy like Messi?
Yeah, of course. I think for everyone that plays football, one of maybe the best player in history. Don't know, everyone talks about this, but one of them for sure. It's something really special. But I think. Yeah, once the game starts, nobody thinks about that, and we hope and we want to win this game. So no more than admiration and respect, but of course we hope we can give him a difficult one this round.
Dejan, Gerald with Fired Up Network. I just wanted to ask, because Peter mentioned you were in LA during the rebuild, which ended up with the Galaxy winning the MLS Cup last year. Do you see the same mentality and the same pieces here in Sporting, that the MLS Cup championship may be just a little bit down the horizon?
Of course, it's gonna be difficult to repeat the season that LA Galaxy did last season, but with the players that are coming in, that are already here, they're good, experienced players, so we are going to give our best to do that again. And I think that we have a very good team. And with my mentality and with the new guys, I think we are ready. I mean, it's not a question that we need to reach playoffs. That's like minimum.
Manu, Robert Casey, Soccer Journal. A couple of questions. Number one, how much does it make you feel more comfortable that, your teammate Shapi's going to be here with you? And number two, what are some things you can tell us about his style of play and how he is as a person?
Yeah, it's good. You come to a new place and you have one familiar face already coming with you. He's a cool guy. He can give us many things for sure. Over there, he's playing always on the right wing, going inside with the left. And he's a guy that works hard a lot, very, very, very hard worker, helps defense a lot, and also he can shoot from distance, he can run in behind, he can combine. I think he can give really good things. I know the league because I've tried to see as much as possible, and I try to get some information, but I think he can help the team a lot for sure.
Manu and Dejan, thank you very much for your time today.